Community coming together to remember the life of a murdered teenager.
Yeah, Kurt, dozens gathered tonight at Yorktown Beach to honor the life of Honesty Selby, taken far too soon.
When a young woman went missing, there was mass panic, and it wasn't too long before they figured out that she had been murdered. But it's why she was murdered and how her body was found that are the most shocking and unusual things of all. Honesty Selby was an 18-year-old girl from Williamsburg, Virginia. She had not lived in the town for too long, but she was getting settled in, making plenty of friends, and attending school at the War Hill High School where she was a senior. Honesty had a lot going for her. She was incredibly social and found that making friends was easy, with them being captivated by her friendly and warm demeanor and her light-hearted jokes. She was driven, passionate, and loving, a winning combination in anyone's book.
She has such a good spirit about her that like little children and babies would just flock to her.
When it came to boyfriends, Honesty had had her fair share. She was a beautiful 18-year-old after all, and the number of people who wanted to be with her seemed to grow by the day. But it was a 21-year-old man named Andarius McClelland that she was in a relationship with. It was nothing stable or serious, and they were very on again, off again, but they seemed like a pretty good match. But the truth was, they had only been dating for around 60 days before things started to go wrong. On January 11th, 2023, Andarius sent Honesty money so that she could get an Uber from Williamsburg to his apartment in Newport News, a journey of around 20 miles. He shared the apartment with his brother, though Honesty didn't have an issue with that. Honesty happily jumped into a rideshare vehicle and made the half-hour trip southeast to the apartment. She arrived there without incident, and when she got there, Andarius suggested that they go for a ride in his car. They could go somewhere a little quieter and more secluded in order to talk, smoke, and generally have fun. Wanting to have some fun now that she had made the trip all the way to see him, Honesty was happy to go along for the ride. For a while, they drove around, listening to music and talking. Eventually, they made their way out of the more populated areas and to the rural suburbs, eventually ending up pulling down a dark and lonely dirt track in a large wooded area in the Isle of Wight County. By then, night had fallen, and there seemed to be no one around but them, something that started to worry Honesty. Somewhat concerned for her safety and worried about what was going to happen next, Honesty discreetly sent her location to a trusted friend who was back in Williamsburg. It was a good idea, and one that made a lot of sense, but what no one could have known was that this was the last time that anyone was ever going to hear from Honesty ever again. Fast forward 2 days, and no one had heard from Honesty since that moment. It was not like her to not be in contact with her family and friends, so to get absolute radio silence from her was certainly something that raised a lot of eyebrows. Where could she be?
And I was just praying that it was like she was at a friend's house, just chilling.
On January 30th, only 2 days after she had gone to see Andarius, Honesty was reported missing, but she had sent her location to a friend, right? Correct, she had, but in a cruel twist of fate, that message was not received. In this day and age, when people are getting uncountable text messages, notifications, and pop-ups each and every day, a few of them sometimes slip through the gaps. And Honesty's location was one such message that avoided detection until the trusted friend went looking for it. When she saw that Honesty had sent her a location, and when she checked the time and date, her blood ran cold. What did this mean? And why was Honesty in such a remote location? There were so many questions that needed answering. With this new piece of information, Honesty's family and friends all set off to the location in order to search for her. Perhaps she was still there, lost, scared, and alone. Maybe she was fine and simply taking a break away from everyone and everything. They just didn't know, but they held their breaths, collectively hoping that was the case. The alternative was too unthinkable for words. While traveling to the location, one of Honesty's family members contacted the police with this new bit of information. It seemed like something the police would want to know, but when the information was relayed, the police told the family and friends to stand down and let them investigate it instead. The property was private, and if family and friends headed down there, they risked tampering with potential evidence, or even getting lost themselves. It was an annoying development, but Honesty's family and friends knew that the police were right. They turned their vehicles around and went home, hoping that the police would have luck in their search of the area. Arriving at the site, the cops got to work slowly going up and down the path, looking for any signs of Honesty.
We know that there was a gate off of Blue Ridge Trail that we did find unsecured, and so we think that is how that she and whoever else she may have been gained access to this area.
The authorities were diligent in their search, and they thoroughly looked for any clues or evidence that might have helped them find where Honesty was. But progress was slower than Honesty's family were hoping for, so they came and got involved in the search. Despite being advised against it by the police, they wanted to be able to help. They could move faster, and maybe, just maybe, they would uncover something that would be of use. They prayed that Honesty was alive, but after several hours of looking, a grim discovery was found, one that shook her family and friends to their very core.
Potter wouldn't disclose who found Honesty's body, but Ebony says it was her, along with Honesty's mother and father.
Honesty's body lay just off of the main dirt road, concealed from obvious sight by trees, bushes, and shrubbery. The fact that it was one of Honesty's best friends and her mother and father that made the tragic discovery is even more saddening, and it brought to a close the manhunt to find what had happened to her. Shaking, Honesty's friend Ebony sent out the location of the body via social media.
You never want to see anything like that in your life.
It wasn't long until the rest of the family and the authorities were on the scene, with cops securing the area and searching for minute clues as to what had happened to her. Her family were understandably devastated by the development, and they struggled to comprehend the beautiful girl was gone. But alongside that sadness and grief were several burning questions that needed answering.
In Isle of Wight County, police say someone found the body of a missing Williamsburg teenager. The family of Honesty Selby reported her missing Friday morning, just days after her 18th birthday. And now they want to know how she died.
It's clear that there was some foul play here. Honesty had not shot herself. She had never shown any indication that she was not happy or didn't want to be here, and she had had a zest for life that was infectious. So it was clear that what had happened to her was not by her own hand, which left just one glaring conclusion: she had been murdered. But by whom? Many signs pointed towards Andarius, but because their relationship had been so casual, many of Honesty's family and friends didn't even know about him, allowing him to fly under the radar and avoid any suspicion. So for her family, this was a devastating mystery that seemed to have no answer.
Just her being here. I'm just gonna miss her, period. She's just supposed to be here.
Also, just because signs pointed to Andarius, it didn't mean that Andarius had anything to do with Honesty's death. Sure, it would have been the most logical conclusion, but you can't jump to conclusions when it comes to this kind of thing. That's why it was so important that the authorities got to the bottom of this horrifying case. The police started off by searching Honesty's phone records. They found that it had last been used 8:30 on the night of the 11th January.
Captain Potter says the teenager's phone was last used around 8:30 Wednesday night, but investigators aren't sure it was Honesty who used it.
But if it wasn't Honesty who had used it, who else was there to have had access to the device? And then there was also the other obvious question of why was Honesty in that specific location in the first place? What was she doing in such a wooded and secluded area that was on private property?
There's never a place that we've ever heard of her visiting or going to, anything.
The truth was that those who knew Honesty best knew that she would never have come here if it meant that she was going to be in harm's way. She was naturally a cautious and even calculating person, and she would never have put herself in a position where something bad might have happened to her. It was just another puzzling element to her tragic death.
She never really seemed to involve herself in anything that could potentially put her in danger.
We need answers. We need answers to all this. There's so many questions, so many questions.
The family were initially angered at Honesty's friend and questioned why she had not picked up the message containing her location sooner. Indeed, the friend felt an immense amount of guilt and shame for not picking up the message sooner and felt as if she had somehow played a part in Honesty's death. But the family soon realized that their anger and blame was misplaced, and the friend couldn't be held accountable for what had happened. It was an honest mistake and an easy oversight to not see the message. And that was something that everyone ultimately forgave her for. The truth was, the location that Honesty had sent allowed the family to actually locate her and gave them some closure.
Police say a shared location that came from Honesty's phone led family members to finding her body.
Had Honesty's friend not picked up the message, the family may never have known where she had died and where her body laid. So in a way, it was still a blessing that Honesty had had the presence of mind to send her location. Even if they couldn't find her alive, at least they found her, and that provided a certain amount of comfort to her family and friends. Of course, it wasn't too long until the authorities started to piece the jigsaw together and form a picture of what happened. While searching Honesty's phone, they found that she had received money from Andarius, and that she had used to pay for an Uber ride to his apartment. This placed Honesty with Andarius around the time of her disappearance and death. Naturally, the cops went to his apartment and took him in for questioning while a team searched the property. Not only did they find his boot prints matched several that were found around Honesty's body, but the car tire marks also matched those on the dirt road. On top of that, and possibly more damning, was that they also found a gun in Andarius's apartment. A forensic analysis of it found that it had recently been discharged, and this lined up with the bullet wound and gun discharge found on Honesty's body.
Yeah, Honesty Selby's family says that her death comes just days after they celebrated her 18th birthday. They reported her missing on Friday after not hearing from her for 2 days, and later that day, her body was found along the Blue Ridge Trail in Windsor. An autopsy revealed that someone had shot Selby. Just yesterday, detectives took Andarius McClellan of Newport News into custody. A judge arraigned McClellan this morning, and he is now in the Western Tidewater Regional Jail.
But would Andarius reveal anything to the police? Would he give them any clues as to what exactly happened to Honesty? Well, when the police sat down and questioned him, what he said shocked them and left even the most experienced and battle-hardened officers shaken. Very openly and very honestly, Andarius started to talk the cops through what happened. He didn't try to sugarcoat anything or hide anything. He guided them through what happened that night, step by step. He started by saying that he had cash-apped her $30 to pay for her Uber, and that when she had arrived at his apartment, he had borrowed his brother's car to go for a ride in. But what he had also borrowed was his brother's gun, something that Honesty had not known about until it was too late. All of this was backed up by a separate interview with Andarius's brother.
Interviews with Andarius's brother revealed that Andarius and Honesty were at the residence in Newport News on the 11th, and they both left together at approximately 7:15 p.m. that evening. On the night of January the 11th, she was at his apartment. When his brother got home from work, he asked to borrow the car. They then left, went to a store, and then, as was commonplace for them two, during their times together, they would look for a location to hang out and smoke marijuana.
They had driven around, and he admitted that he had no intention of hurting her. They were simply enjoying time together. But upon arriving at the secluded road, they had somehow ended up arguing, and things had got heated. That's when he pulled out the gun and shot her once in the head.
According to McClellan, they drove up the path. They spent some time talking, smoking marijuana, and at some point, an argument began over their relationship. Andarius tells investigators that he had the firearm on his person or in his hand at the time, and during the argument, he fired the weapon, striking Honesty. He says he then panicked, left the area, and went back to Newport News.
Panicking, Andarius dumped Honesty's body in the woods and sped off, hoping that no one would be able to link the two of them together. They weren't an official item, and not many people knew that they were even seeing each other. And if the truth was told, he would possibly have gotten away with the murder if it wasn't for one little fact that he could never have known about: the text message containing her location. This message had not only allowed authorities to find Honesty's body, but also linked Andarius to the murder. But it was the calm way that Andarius explained everything that was the most chilling thing of all. It was straightforward, very matter-of-fact, and it answered every single question that the authorities and Honesty's family and friends might have had. By all accounts, it was the ideal confession, one made without much prompt, and one that filled in the gaps that the police were starting to suspect. Yet it just felt so cold and disconnected that police were unsettled by everything that Andarius said. Police ultimately charged Andarius with second-degree murder, something that could potentially land him with a sentence of 25 years to life behind bars. At the end of the day, though, the family were left grieving for Honesty. The community gathered around them and tried to celebrate her life instead of mourning her passing.
Community coming together to remember the life of a murdered teenager.
Yeah, Kurt, dozens gathered tonight at Yorktown Beach to honor the life of Honesty Selby, taken far too soon.
Friends, family, and even strangers all gathered to remember Honesty, who she was, and what she stood for. At only 18 years old, she had had her whole life laid ahead of her, but it was so cruelly snatched away over a simple argument with her on-again, off-again boyfriend. They celebrated her achievements and fondly remembered everything that she had done so far in her young and bright life.
Friends and family gathered to commemorate 18-year-old Honesty Selby. They played music, set out flowers, and candles were lit, illuminating the mourning faces of the loved ones left behind.
But ultimately, it was thanks to Honesty's quick thinking and social media that her body was found and her killer was finally brought to justice. It would never bring her back, but that was certainly a consolation to those who missed her more than anything in the world. So now it's over to you. What did you think of this sad story? Do you think social media played a big role in helping authorities find Honesty's body? And how would you have felt if you were the friend who missed her text message containing her location? As always, we love to hear from you, so be sure to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments section down below. Please give this video a like and a subscribe, and thanks for watching.